It's been 5 years since this white picket fence first attracted my attention. The little girl I brought here for soccer is now a teenager, my daughter Corey. Thanks, Cor.
Bye, Daddy.
I've changed too in the last 5 years. I've learned to see the visible traces of those who came before us.
Trees and flowers planted around long-gone homes. Narrow county roads that were once busy highways for transports drawn by horses, oxen, and mules. Old railroad beds, old homes, old churches, and of course, old graveyards.
And I've learned that by focusing on a single, ordinary individual, it's possible to connect emotionally with the past and to care about people you've never met. For me, that ordinary individual is Samuel Coleman Duvall. I found him by chance, but sometimes I wonder if actually he found me. On May the 5th, 1861, in the first year of the war, at the very beginning, General Robert E. Lee wrote,
I foresee that the country will have to pass through a terrible ordeal, a necessary expiation, perhaps, for our national sins.
In this view, Samuel Duvall and 600,000 other soldiers who wore the blue and the gray were expiation or atonement for the national sin of slavery.
For Samuel Duvall, the deck was stacked. In the course of my research, I discovered that, besides the Duvall brothers, there was another soldier from this farm who fought in the Civil War.
Life's deck was stacked for this man, too. In 1864, a 19-year-old slave of the Duvalls named George W. Harris joined the 30th Regiment of United States Colored Troops. He trained in Bryanstown, Maryland. After guarding wagon trains in the Virginia wilderness, the 30th Regiment was sent to the trenches at Petersburg, Virginia. On July 30th, 1864, George W. Harris, led by a 24-year-old colonel named Delavan Bates, fought in the Battle of the Crater, one of the most horrific battles of the entire war. Pennsylvania miners dug a tunnel under the Confederate lines. At 4:44 in the morning, 8,000 pounds of gunpowder exploded. Federal troops then attacked. United States colored troops were in the second wave. George W. Harris received a saber wound on the head that day. Colonel Delavan Bates received a gunshot wound in the face. In 1999, I attended the dedication of the African American Civil War Memorial in Washington, D.C. I was there with a camera, but in my heart, I was also there for George W. Harris. He lived until 1892 and had several children, and I wondered that day if any of his descendants were in the crowd, or if I was the only one there who knew anything about him. George W. Harris is buried beneath today's Rhode Island Avenue Metro Station in Washington, D.C. While working on this film, I've had tangible and intangible contacts with the past. For example, I've held original letters penned by some of the people in this film in my hands. I've been in Daniel Duvall Jr.'s home, where in 1906 he wrote the letter describing his brother's death at Gettysburg. I've held the actual draft enrollment book that Springfield Baldwin held when he visited this very property that I now stand on.
And I've lived and talked with direct descendants of the Civil War Duval family that lived here. As for intangible contact with the past, I can only say that
When you go alone to ponder and to imagine in the solitude of a place where great and desperate things happened, when you are on the fields and among the great rocks, especially if it is the last quiet hour before dark, when even the birds become silent, you feel a presence.
call it a heightened sense of awareness, awe, or reverence. You feel it.
On November 19, 1886, some 23 years after the battle, survivors of the Confederate Maryland Infantry Battalion returned to Culp's Hill to dedicate this monument. Captain George Thomas made a speech noting courage and duty faithfully performed. At its conclusion, he turned to the members of the Gettysburg Memorial Association with these words: "And now it is my duty to turn over to the charge of the association this memorial of the deeds of the sons of Maryland, whose cause was lost in the clash of arms. You will guard it well, not as a tribute to the cause that's dead, but as an added page to the great record, which belongs to no section and to no time, the joint heritage of the North and the South, and of right to be transmitted in all its fullness to ages yet to come." Thank you.